because of the bad weather over the Easter stages, it's been 3 months since there's been a round of the Irish Tarmac Championship, so all the drivers here can't wait to get stuck into the mountains and the lakes of Killarney. So here we are at the start, and would you believe it, the sun is out just as promised. So to take us through over 230 kilometres of the most picturesque, most challenging Irish tarmac you can find, it's Brid, Derry.
Day one would see the crews tackle 7 stages, mostly to the east of Killarney, but the rally would start with the classic Malls Gap. Favourite to the drivers and the spectators, this was the perfect taster of what's to come over this challenging 2-day event. So for Dara O'Riordan and Tony McDade, it would be the start they wanted. Fastest up the gap in the morning and ending stage 2 with a 0.8 second lead of the event. With a good run out in West Cork behind them before their final stage exit from the event, Dennis Cronin and Coleman Hurley were back on form here in Killarney, a fastest time themselves on stage 2, helping them secure that second place overall. As well as the battle up front, it would also be a battle for third place, but it would be Thomas Fitzmaurice and Fionn Foley that come out on top of that battle after stage 2. However, it was close. Just 0.3 seconds behind Fitzmaurice were Gary Jennings and Neil Doherty, and they needed some points on the board this season after they struggled to 6th last time out in Galway. For Declan and Brian Boyle, it would be a short-lived event. They started with a good pace, settling into 5th overall on stage 1, but sadly the car would come to a stop in the following stage when the gearbox forced the retirement.
40 up the hill, 6 right long, hug in, 6 right long, hug in, 60 and the 6 left flowing, 60, 6 left flowing.
So this meant 5th would be now in the hands of Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan, which was an impressive start on stages unfamiliar to the Donegal driver. It wasn't the best of starts for Derek McGarrity and James McKee. They pick up a puncture in stage 1 and it cost them around 30 seconds. Not ideal, but at least the pair were still in 6th and with a lot more time to claw back that lost time. With the expected dominance of the World Rally cars at the top of the results, it would be up to Alan Ring and Adrian Deasy to lead the best of the rest, and they certainly weren't holding back either. For Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly, the battle of the brothers went the wrong way in Galway, but in Killarney it was a different story, Sam holding 8th overall at this stage. Owen Doyle and Peter Brennan were another crew to miss out in Galway, retiring early on in the event, but this weekend was going better, 9th overall now. And rounding out the top 10 after stage 2 would be JJ Fleming and Mark Kane in the focus. Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty go into Killarney in the lead of the Irish Tarmac Modified Championship after round 1, and this weekend would start the same way, leading the crews by 5 seconds after stage 2. This would, however, be after the loss of early stage 1 leader Roy White in stage 2. Local knowledge is always a good thing on stages like this, and it was showing for Robert Duggan and Mickey Galvin as they lead the front-wheel drive crews in 2nd place in the Civic. The talk of the national rally this weekend would be Craig Breen and Paul Nagle. With no pressure of the championship, it would be all about having fun and trying to get Paul the win on his home event. For Charlie and John Hickey, it would be 4th place, 22 seconds down on the times being set by Breen at this stage. Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kerwin aren't far behind Hickey. They end stage 2 just 1.7 seconds down on the 4th place pair in their escort.
Well, I found this nice safe spot about 8 kilometres into stage 3, and already a battle has broken out among the top drivers, particularly between the early leader here, Dara O'Riordan, and the man driving the car in which he won this rally last year, Thomas Fitzmaurice. Let's see how they're getting on. First on the road, Derry O'Riordan, and the clock is started. Let's see how they go against the splits. Dennis Cronin, the winner in 2010. I think he's gaining time according to the times we have here.
Unfortunately though, despite the speed through the stage, it would be the end of the road for Cronin at the end of stage 3, spinning out and damaging the steering on the Impreza.
Gary Jennings hard on the back of him, and I reckon he's up at our point.
And indeed, that's what the times would indicate. Not quite able to overhaul O'Riordan, but the gap was closing by this stage, now down to just 3.4 seconds after stage 4. So with the top 2 off in a battle of the road, the next battle was once again for third, and making a good move up the results into that third place were Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan. And what about Thomas Fitzmaurice? Well, unfortunately for the Subaru driver, it would be power steering problems that would slow any progress. Having been within sight of the rally leader, it would be a drop down to 4th place after stage 4. These stages would see some good times from Alan Ring and Adrian Deasy in the Evo, moving up into 5th place now and extending their Group N lead.
40, fast right 2 wide, 100 to the sign, right 3 minus, 50, right 4, and left 3, and left 2 opens, 100, left 4 push, don't cut, 90, flat right 260.
And for Derek McGarity and James McKee, it would still be 6th. Not able to make up that lost time with the puncture yet, but they would continue to try going into the afternoon stages. Owen Doyle and Peter Brennan put in some faster times to move themselves up into 7th place. For Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly, it would still be 8th, but that was under pressure going into the afternoon stages as brother Josh was catching them by the stage. And indeed, he was catching a few people, moving up from outside the top 10 into 9th now, just over 6 seconds between them going into stage 5. And it would still be a neat and tidy run for JJ Fleming and Mark Kane as they continue to round out the top 10. With an early misfire Cureton service, it would be a jump into the lead for Craig Breen and Paul Nagle by the end of stage 4 as they open up a small but significant 2.7 second advantage. Which means for Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty, it's a drop down into 2nd place. The fight was far from over with plenty more stages to push Breen for that number 1 spot again. Despite dropping down to 3rd, the times were still good for Robert Duggan and Mickey Galvin in the Civic, the pair the only front-wheel drive crew in the top 10 at the moment. A push on these stages means a step up to 4th for Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kirwan, now with a 10-second lead in that place themselves. And the advance of Kiernan means a step back into 5th for Charlie and John Hickey in their Escort. So just over midway through day 1, and this is how the leaderboards are shaping up.
Darragh, what sort of a morning have you had?
Not too bad, no. Went well. The miles gap this morning wasn't too bad. We were the fastest and that. I thought we'd struggle there with power, but no, it went well. The last loop there, no, wasn't too bad. The last one with a bit of a spin, but we got away with it. So, no, we're happy enough now. 4 new tyres and go again.
What went through your mind when you had the bit of a spin?
I won't say it on telly, but...
What kind of a morning have you had?
Yeah, this is our first time doing Killarney, so it's new territory for us. We were very cautious up the gap. Starting to get going now. Last stage enjoyed that, started to push a bit, and times are starting to come. So overall, very happy.
So 3rd place after the gap and the first loop. Are you happy with 3rd place? Because you got Thomas kind of breathing down your neck, haven't you?
Yeah, I've no doubt that Thomas and Derek and the rest of the guys will hunt us down now on this slip. But we're going to start to go a little bit faster.
Have you had a good morning?
Yeah, we had a great morning. We had a great run up the gap. It's great to be up the gap in a world car. I love the gap. And I suppose we had an advantage. We'd done the gap in the past, and maybe some of the other guys hadn't, you know. So I got a bit of time up in everybody in the gap. And went into stage 2 and I picked the wrong tyre. Stage 3 we made a bit of a push, and at the end of it then I said the road jammed, you know. So went into the last stage with no power steering, and I have absolutely no hands now.
But you're happy with where you are? I mean, it's kind of gone according to plan apart from the little Nagle.
We dropped about 45 seconds. You know, I'm seated 4th overall now. I'm 8 behind Doherty, so I need to start pulling back time. You know, there's a day and a half of rally, and if anything can happen. So I'm going at it on the second loop, see can I pull it back.
On to the final stages of day 1, and there would be no change at the top. Dara O'Riordan and Tony McDade put to rest any doubts that the newer generation World Rally car wouldn't be able to perform as well as the previous cars by ending day 1 with the lead. Only 7 seconds, but a lead nonetheless. Drama for Gary Jennings in the final stage as the car overheats at the stage start. They still managed to set a fastest time, so for now it's second place, and the chase would have to wait until the action restarted on day 2. With the fight up ahead in full swing for Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan, it would still be third. The gap between them and the leaders almost a minute now, but themselves with the lead of 40 seconds over 4th place.
Small bump and dip and 4 left. And crest bump narrows at the Armco, 4 left. 16. 5 left at the chevron loose.
Unfortunately though, that 4th place would be changing as Thomas Fitzmaurice retires in stage 5 where the car leads the road in a heavy impact. The crew suffer injuries, but thanks to the safety built into the car and the work of the event's safety teams, the pair are treated in hospital and are on the way to recovery. So the unfortunate incident means it would be 4th place now for Derek McGarity and James McKee. The time was still down from the puncture, but power steering problems were also causing the pair some issues in the tighter sections of the stages. Despite the problems though, McGarity does manage to jump past Alan Ring at this stage. The pace would need to be picked back up on day 2 if he was to make back any of that 36-second deficit. Things would be looking up for Owen Doyle and Peter Brennan in the focus at the end of day 1. They move up into 6th now. Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly were still leading their own little sibling battle, and they had managed to claw back a little time now to lie in 7th place. The gap to 8th place Josh Moffat and John Rowan now 10 seconds, still close and still anyone's with another day of competition to go in the morning. A little advantage for JJ Fleming and Mark Kane in this final loop of stages as they end the day in 9th place. And rounding out the top 10 now are Stephen and Suzanne Wright in the Evo. A couple of classes outside the top 10 at the end of the day, and in Class 1 it would be a good lead for Stephen Carey and Breda O'Driscoll in the Civic. In Class 2 there would be just one crew remaining, so the class lead belongs to Richard Tannehill and Raymond Coppinger at the end of day 1.
Derry, you've had quite an afternoon. You practically doubled your lead over Gary.
Yeah, that last loop went well there now, kind of a clean run through it and do anything stupid or anything, so no, I was happy enough. Now we dropped a bit of time in the last one, but no, we're happy enough now. So started one and finished one, so it's good.
What was the reason for dropping the time in the last stage?
I'd say just I don't know really. I suppose I just wanted to get through clean too and just get back without doing anything. And it was the stage with a bit of a spin there the last time, and I just wanted to get through without making any mistakes. So, but I was happy because I went 7 or 8 faster than I did the first time anyway, so I was happy enough with it.
I was hearing the word drama in the same sentence as Gary Jennings. Tell me about it.
That's always the way with me. Yeah, she started to overheat just the start of the last stage, just at the start line, so no, we pulled it in here and we got some water in it and we got it to here, and it seems to be okay again now. But
yeah, they need water in them, don't they?
They do. I know. We don't know where the water went. That's the problem. You know, is it a problem in the engine always or an airlock in the engine? So, but no, we got here and we were fastest through the stage. But obviously we caught traffic. We were running that far back, but it was gone. It felt all right. But
right. It's a good problem solved.
Well, hopefully, fingers crossed. You know.
Well, you got enough time now to get it fixed?
No, they've done what they can. They've got the water back in, they've got the pressure back up. It seems fine, but we'll not know the Moll's Gap in the morning.
Because you haven't dropped that much time, bearing in mind the drama you've had. You're only, 7 and a bit now behind Derry.
Yeah, it was close, to be truthful, I didn't expect a race there down here, Derry's in a league of his own, but we're keeping him honest, and that's what we want to do, and we've got a good gap behind now, so we'll see how the gap goes in the morning, and we'll monitor pace from there.
On to the final stage of the day, and for Craig Breen and Paul Nagle it would be a 19-second overnight lead to take to bed with them. But the rally was far from over. They would have it all to do again on day 2, at least now with a small advantage to start the day.
Right over crest, tightens the 3 plus long, and 4 left minus sharp.
So for the local crew of Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty, it would be second place. 19 seconds was the biggest the gap had been up to now, but it certainly wasn't an unmanageable difference to take into day 2. Unfortunately for Robert Duggan and Mickey Galvin, their fantastic run in third would come to an end on stage 6. This means, of course, that it's a step up for Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kirwan, as they benefit from Duggan's retirement and move up into third. The gaps either side of them opening up a little by each stage, which could see the pair in no man's land by the end of the event.
Continues for 150, and it tightens to the 4 left at the second 3 go on. There's your first 3. Here's your second one. There's your second one. 80 to a long 2 right, continues for 150. Long 2 right, continues for 150. Into 1.
Change in fourth now, and instead of a step up for Charlie Hickey, it's a jump into fourth for Kevin O'Donoghue and Joe O'Leary, the pair jumping up from 6th place in the last loop of stages. So for Charlie and John Hickey, it would still be 5th place in the escort, 28 seconds behind O'Donoghue. A few of the classes outside the top of the results, and it's the lead in class 13 for Ed Murphy and John McCarthy in 6th overall, over 10th placed Thomas O'Keefe and Diarmuid Keane. 8th place Gary Deneen and Damien Fleming lead class 11 by 28 seconds from Ken O'Neill and Ronald Reardon in 9th overall. In class 20 it would be 11th place Mark Nagle and Nullig Breen, leading the class over Keith Naughton and Sinead Canny. Dennis Hickey and Timmy Brosnan lead class 12 over Con Lucy and Brian Hickey. Paddy Callaghan and Danny Murphy in the Starlet lead class 9 over Noel O'Sullivan and Nicholas Burke in the escort. Class 10 would be led by Victor and Susan Beamish in the Nova over Gordon Draper and Derek Bovenzer in the Peugeot 205. And in class 16, Michael Canny and Andy Hayes have a good lead over Ian Graham and Liam Regan.
Yeah, we're leading the national rally for the moment. We've had a fantastic day. We had a problem with the car on the gap this morning. We had a very bad misfire, so the boys in fairness sorted that here in service, and we've had a good day. Unfortunately, we came across a big accident on Gorton again with Thomas Fitzmaurice, so thank God he's not too bad and he'll live to fight another day. But overall, our day has been good. We've had lots of fun.
Can you compete and have fun in this car as well?
I think that's the motto of this car. It's just purely about having fun. Okay, you get carried away sometimes and you have too much fun and you lose time, and ultimately I'm a competitive kind of guy, so I want to try and put in some good times, but we're having a good mixture of both, should we say.
And so far, what's been the highlight from day one?
Just the sheer enjoyment of driving the car with no pressure. I'm used to been working in a pressured environment. In the European Championship, it's especially driving for a manufacturer like Peugeot, it's a lot of responsibility, but this weekend is purely about having fun.
Another spectacle for the fans this weekend would be the inclusion of Killarney as a round of the FIA European Historic Championship. Not only bringing in the more commonly seen escorts, but also historic examples from Opel, Fiat, Volvo and Lancia. But despite the variety and the international interest, it would still be an Irishman and an escort topping the results at the end of day 1, as Wesley Patterson and Sean Head finished stage 7 in the lead after climbing their way up from a 3rd place start. Early leaders of the event would in fact be the Welsh pairing of Thomas Davies and Uric Davies. They start well with the lead, but by the end of the day they were just over a minute off the pace in 2nd. For Mark Falvey and Gerard Conway it would be 3rd, another pair to drop a little over the second half of the day, as they did start the evening running in 2nd place for a while. For Andrew Siddall and Carl Williamson it would be a large gap opening up to the top 3 now, over 4 minutes between them and 3rd place as they end day 1 in 4th. And in 5th place would be the first of the Swedish crews, Tony Jansen and Eric Davidson, in their escort running 46 seconds behind Siddall. And it would be an unfortunate day for Steve Perez and Paul Spooner as they dropped time with a broken diff, but the car would be prepared and back out to entertain the crowds on day 2. As well as the FIA Historics, the event would also feature the regular historic category, and topping that category at the end of day 1 would be Drew Wiley and Dean Beckett in their escort, a lead of 36 seconds going into day 2. For Philip Wiley and John Young it would be 2nd, a move up to that place after starting the day in 3rd place. For championship leaders James O'Mahony and Kerry Barry it would be a 2nd place start, only to lose that on stage 2 and finish the day in 3rd. 4th place would be the Mark 1 escort of Philip McKibben and Padraig Brick. And gaining a little time in the final stages of the day to lie in 5th were John Spires and Suzanne Nedrum in the Porsche. Day 1 complete, and this is how the overnight leaderboard looks. Day 2 takes the cruise south. Once again the day starts with a run over Mall's Gap. Then it's on to the famous stages like Healy Pass, Cod's Head and Ardgroom, before the journey back to the finish at the Glen Eagle Hotel in Killarney. Unfortunately, day 2 would start with some major changes to the results. After setting a seriously quick time over the gap, Dara O'Riordan and Tony McDade would fall foul of the tricky stages in stage 9 as they leave the road and are unable to continue. The chances of a hat-trick of wins sadly comes to an end here. One man's misfortunes would be another's gain, as Gary Jennings and Neil Doherty are best placed to take that number 1 spot at this stage, and with a good advantage now to anyone behind them. So for everyone else, O'Riordan's retirement means promotion up the results, and for Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan it would be 2nd place now. But with almost a minute to the rally leader, their focus would be on keeping hold of that 2nd place from a chasing Derek McGarrity.
All right now, tightens a wee bit on the exit.
With the power steering issue still there and unable to be fixed at the event, a win was certainly a long shot this weekend for Derek McGarrity and James McKee, but 2nd wasn't, and all they needed to do was put pressure on Donagh Kelly and try and close in that advantage over the remaining stages. For Alan Ring and Adrian Deasy it would be a promotion to 4th place. It would certainly be good for the championship points to finish there, and with too much deficit to 3rd it wasn't going to be any better, but just 7 seconds was all that was stopping him losing that place for 5th. And in that 5th place were Owen Doyle and Peter Brennan. The times were getting better, including a 4th fastest time on stage 9. So that 7 seconds to 4th place wouldn't be too much of a problem to make up in the remaining stages. Things were still looking good for Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly in the Group N battle, still behind Ring at this stage, but keeping brother Josh at bay still. For JJ Fleming and Mark Kane, it was getting better as the event went on. 7th place now, and going well on these stages. Consistent 5th fastest times were helping the results. A good move up the results into 8th for Stephen and Suzanne Wright in the Evo. The Monaghan pairing looking good for a decent result this weekend. A drop down the results at this stage for Josh Moffat and John Rowan into 9th. The pair lose a few minutes on stage 8. They now trail the Wrights by over 3 minutes. And after leading the class into Dead 2, it would be a step into the top 10 now for the civic pairing of Stephen Carey and Breda O'Driscoll.
Have you not got highly paid staff for that?
No, definitely not. We're budgetrallying.com.
Budget rallying, leading the rally.
Yeah, it's been a good run. Derry put quite a push on over the gap. We had the wrong tyres off the gap with the right tyres for the last stage. So, unfortunate for anybody, but Derry slid off. So, yeah.
But it's happened, and you're leading.
Yeah, we're leading. It's that kind of thing. Do you push or do you stay where you are? Because the two boys behind are nip and tuck as well for second and third. But hopefully, they've a good enough lead.
The gaps behind you have kind of grown a little bit in your favour. There's a little bit of a comfort gap, I would guess.
Yeah, I think it's 47 and 48 seconds, but there's 5 long stages to go and they're very, very tricky. So, a pump's running can throw it away.
So, Derek, what was the story of the morning?
Yeah, we haven't had a bad morning, but we have a power steering issue which we've had from the start of the rally, and we can't fix it, so we just have to drive around it.
That's hard work around this part of the world.
It's very hard work on that last stage. It's 11 or 12 hairpins towards the finish, and every time you come to a hairpin, brake heavy, the steering locks for a split second, and it's just costing us time everywhere. But as I say, it's an issue we have. We can't fix it here. We can fix it back at the workshop, so we have to drive around it.
Gary's inherited the lead. What happened to Darragh? Did you see anything of the incident, or?
Obviously, we've seen him on Tim Healy Pass on a very fast section, uphill section, into a 4th gear right-hander bumpy. I would assume it's got out of shape over the bumps and he's just spun the car into the field. Luckily, doesn't seem to be a lot of damage and they're out of it, so everything's good.
And what's your plan from here on in? Do you sit there and play it easy, or do you fancy second or maybe the lead?
The lead, Gary's too big a gap and he's too wily a fox to sort of go after now. But Donaldson's second there. We've closed the gap by 10 seconds this morning. Hard to know if we can close it any further. It's going to be difficult with the small issue. And he's also driving very, very well, but I'm going to try.
Unfortunately, the start of Day 2 would be the end of the road for Craig Breen and Paul Nagle as they retire with engine failure on the opening stage. This means that for Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty, it would be the lead once again. 23 seconds the advantage now, but that wouldn't be safe from the advance of the crews behind. The first of which, Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kirwan, were pushing O'Mara as hard as they could. It wouldn't be easy, but Kiernan would have that win in his sights going into the next few stages. For Kevin O'Donoghue and Joe O'Leary, it would be third. The gaps in the rest of the field were opening up, and 55 seconds was their deficit to second place at this stage. For Charlie and John Hickey, it would be fourth, a little improvement since the end of Day 1 as they move up one place. Over the next few stages there wouldn't be much change at the top as Gary Jennings and Neil Doherty continue to lead the event, and despite losing a handful of seconds with a stall on this hairpin, the pair extend their lead to over a minute now. No change in second for Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan. The pair still going well on the unfamiliar stages, setting third fastest times all day. But would that second place be safe? Derek McGarrity and James McKay had found their rhythm again and were clawing their way back up the times. 3 fastest times in a row were certainly showing they meant business, and they moved to within 2 seconds of that second place now. For Alan Ring and Adrian Deasy, there wasn't likely to be any advance on that fourth place, but the aim now wouldn't be to improve on it, just to keep hold of it, and things were going well so far. Fourth with just a few stages remaining. With the event getting to the final stages, the gaps were starting to open up a little more, and Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly had a good advantage in that 5th place now, over 3 minutes ahead of their closest competition. And trailing Moffat in that 6th place were Stephen and Suzanne Wright. They may be a few minutes back, but that still puts them third in class and of course inside the top 10 overall. Unfortunately, this loop of stages sees us lose JJ Fleming from his 7th place, putting the car off the road on the Healy Pass. Stage 11 would also see the end of another focused WRC pairing, as we lose Owen Doyle and Peter Brennan from the results after they had been lying in 5th place. So the loss of a few crews meant a jump back up to 7th now for Josh Moffat and John Rowan. Not quite a burst of pace from the crew, but this event was as much about endurance than anything else. A new face in the top 10 now as we see the Evo 10 of Rory and James Byrne jump up into 8th. The Northern Ireland crew gained a place in each of the stages this morning, but could they go any further up the results before the end of the event? Stephen Carey and Breda O'Driscoll lie in 9th place after briefly dropping down into 11th for a few stages. And rounding out the top 10 now were William Maviti and William Lynch, another crew to consistently gain places through the event, just creeping their way into 10th after this loop of stages. This loop of stages wouldn't see much change at all. In fact, the positions remained the same at the top of the national rally, but the advantage in that first place didn't. Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty suffering some engine problems on the stages and allowing himself to be caught.
And the 6 left, into red jump, into hairpin right, don't cut. And the 4 left, don't cut, 120.
So for Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kirwan, the gap was down to just 13 seconds. There were only 3 more stages remaining, but the win could be theirs if things go to plan. For now though, second is as high as they would climb. And with the battle raging ahead, third place Kevin O'Donoghue and Joe O'Leary would continue as they were, over a minute and a half off the lead and in no man's land with 3 stages remaining. With just the final leg of stages to complete, this is how the leaderboard is looking. So at the end of the event, the FIA Historic category would take a bit of a shake-up as we lose Thomas and Ulrich Davies in Stage 9, changing the leaderboard somewhat. In 5th at the end of the event were Henrik Bovey and Ken Renstall, the Swedish pair consistent with the times all weekend. Fellow Swedes Tony Jansson and Eric Davidson bring their escort home in 4th place. Andrew Siddall and Carl Williamson are some way off the pace at the front by the end of the event, but they are the best of the rest and claim a podium place for their troubles. The fight at the top wasn't the closest battle this weekend, but the leading crews were in a league of their own. Compared to the rest of the field, Mark Falvey and Gerard Conway are the ones who have to settle for the runner-up prize with 2nd place in their escort. But coming out over a minute and a half ahead after 15 stages were Wesley Patterson and Sean Head. In the Irish Historic category, it would be the UK crew of Tony Robinson and Chris Williams in the Porsche. No change in 4th for Philip McKibben and Padraig Brick. They remain there to the finish. Unfortunately for James O'Mahony and Kerry Barry, it would be a disappointing retirement from 3rd place on Stage 12. For John Spears and Suzanne Needrum, it would be a few places gained to take the final step on the podium at the end of the event. But one of the drivers of the afternoon would come from Isle of Man crew Declan Jackson and Barry McCartney. they put in some good times to jump from 6th into 2nd over the course of day 2. But none of that could match the pace at the front as Drew Wiley and Dean Beckett walk away with the victory, a win of over 4.5 minutes by the end of the event. As usual, the juniors join us on day 2, and at the end of the day it would be 5th for John O'Flaherty and Tommy Kaman in the Toyota Starlet. For Kevin McLaughlin and Kieran McGinley, it was a steady start, 7th in the opening stage, but the pace was picked up from there and the pair eventually finished in 4th place. Third place would go to Daniel Cronin and Shane Buckley. Unfortunately for Darren Young and PJ O'Dowd, their run in 2nd place had been cut short with retirement on stage 10. Which means that runners-up this weekend would be Conor Moore and Ella Ryan. The County Wexford driver tried his best to catch the eventual winners, but even a fastest time on the final stage wasn't enough. So for Vincent McSweeney and Michael Carney, it would be the win. The lead of the event was theirs all day, and the win didn't really ever seem to be under doubt. They walk away with a lead of just over a minute after 8 stages. Unfortunately for Charlie and Johnny Hickey, it would be a last-minute drop down to 6th at the end of the event. This meant a jump up into 5th for Ken O'Neill and Ronald Reardon in the Puma. For Gary Dineen and Damien Fleming, it had been a good weekend, starting off steady in 16th place and working their way up to 4th at the end of the event. And for Kevin O'Donoghue and Joe O'Leary, it would be 3rd. Despite trying, it would have to be 2nd for Paddy Kiernan and Gary Kirwan. The pair unable to claw any more time from the leaders, with no more stages left and nothing more to give. 2nd was the result they left here with this weekend.
100 to a 5 right. Don't let her spin, let her steady first. 100 to a 5 right. 100 up the middle, your boy's not going to catch it. 5 right. 100 up the middle to a tight 5 right. 40 to a fast, long 5 left. Cup. Long fast 5 left into 5 left at the lane again.
So it's a well-deserved win for Fergus O'Mara and Brian Doherty. Had it not been for the dominance of Breen on day 1, O'Mara wouldn't have been out of that top spot for very long. And on day 2 he seemed unstoppable, even with the problems. So for the local man, the win was as good as it gets here in Killarney.
What a fantastic weekend. What does it mean?
Yeah, it means a lot to us, you know. It's our local rally. We've tried a number of years trying to win this. We've had 2 seconds and 2 thirds, so we know we've been looking forward to this day, you know.
So it was your time this weekend?
Yeah, we had a bit of luck on our side because we mechanically we had a problem, and it was just it was very lucky we discovered it, otherwise we mightn't have finished, you know.
Is it one of those places you've got to come here and serve your dues before you win?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of learning on these stages. Like, I mean, our Groom as a stage I think it's the toughest stage in the country, you know. A lot of other drivers would agree to that. And, you know, there's no prisoners inside there, you know. Make one mistake and you're in a stone wall.
So on to the final overall results in the international event, and a couple of the class winners not making it into the top 10. For Liam Egan and Raymond Coppinger, it would be the win in Class 6, the Corolla WRC driver making the trip back from the USA once again to compete this weekend. In Class 2, it would be a class victory for Richard Tannehill and Brian Crawford, the Peugeot 208 R2 driver getting to grips with the car a little more as the event went on, and setting sometimes just outside the top 10. So on to the top 10, and in 10th place it would be Pat Price and Patrick Price. Despite a few minor excursions in the car, they finished the event with a good result. William Mavitti and William Lynch make a move up 1 place into 9th, as do a handful more due to retirement ahead. But whatever the reason, it's a welcomed move into that place for the final result. it would be an 8th place finish for Rory and James Byrne in the Evo 10, their event ending with a 6th fastest time over the final stage. Stephen Carey and Brid O'Driscoll bring the Civic home in 7th place, and they are the only two-wheel drive crew to make the top 10 this weekend. For Josh Moffat and John Rowan, it would be the time lost on stage 8 that would be their downfall in the end, but they still managed a 6th place finish and 3rd in class. Second in that class and 5th overall though were Stephen and Suzanne Wright. They finish a minute ahead of 3rd, but themselves a good way off the class lead. Unfortunately, it would be a last-minute disappointment for Alan Ring and Adrian Deasy, as they end a fantastic run in 4th with retirement on stage 13.
Rear diff, coming. Something is jammed. Back to road. Okay, they can see us. And they see us? Nothing? Nothing. Nothing at all? Nothing. Okay. Get him over, ball burst.
This of course means that Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly are in a position to pick up where Alan left off and take up 4th overall and the Group N class win here this weekend. There would also be some change on the podium too, as the battle for that 2nd place was decided in the final kilometres, and unfortunately for Donagh Kelly and Kevin Flanagan, it would be themselves who lose out on that 2nd place by just a 0.5 of a second. There was certainly no doubting the pace though this weekend on stages unfamiliar to the Donegal driver.
5 right now and 5 left. And 5 right. Dip, 5 left over small crest. Don't cut it. And 5 right. 5 right opens push.
So that means that even with the weekend's problems, it would be a last minute jump up into 2nd for Derek McGarity and James McKee. And despite a final push from Kelly on the final stage to reclaim that 2nd place, McGarity would come out on top with that half a second advantage. But with all this going on for the final podium places, there was no stopping Gary Jennings and Neil Doherty. 2nd place for the first half of the event was maybe as good as they were hoping for coming into the event, but to come away with the win was the ideal end to a difficult and well-driven weekend's rallying. So after 2 days of close-fought action, here's a reminder of how the results were decided.
So look, you not only finished, you won the thing.
Yeah, it's good. You know, number 1 to get a finish and number 2 to win it. Brilliant, fantastic.
And what does it mean?
Yeah, well, we won Donegal last year, which is a big rally. You know, Killarney is probably the next biggest one that, in my eyes, and to have the 2 of them on my CV is fantastic, and it really opens up the Tarmac Championship for us.
And you hadn't competed since, where was it, back in Galway?
Yeah, we haven't done nothing. You know, we've had the cars been converted to right-hand drive, and we never drove it until Friday morning, but you know, probably we'll get some more mileage under our belt now before Donegal, and we'll get a good rap at Donegal, a good grab at Ulster, and see how the championship goes.
A word for Dara, because you were locked in a big battle with him yesterday and this morning.
Yeah, you know, I'm pleased with myself to be so close to Dara. I expected him to be away out, and I had the wrong tyres on this morning for the gap. He knew that, and unfortunately made a mistake on the 2nd stage. And you know, Dara and his family is lovely people, and it's just unfortunate. And I must say for Thomas Fitzmaurice as well, who had a bad accident yesterday, I've just had a text from him. So yeah, it's good to see he's getting on okay.
So what does this mean for the championship now?
Yeah, I heard them saying we're up there. You know, we're leading the championship now. So yeah, it's good. You know, we moved back up north now, up to my country, up to Donegal, and then the Ulster rallies obviously in Enniskillen beside me, and then we're back down here for Cork. So yeah, it opens up the championship for us.
And is this place just one massive adrenaline rush for you?
Yeah, and it's all over now. I'll probably go home now and just cry. Yes, adrenaline, boys. You know, to come here and to see the fans, as you've seen on the stages here, it's fantastic. I don't think there's crowds like this anywhere else in Europe. It's fantastic.
So after many, many years of trying, Gary Jennings finally wins in Killarney and becomes the first man from Northern Ireland since 2007 to win here at this famous rally. And after all the excitement and after all the drama, that's it from us. We'll see you next time.